In the shadow of Brussels' gleaming towers, the European Union stood as an unbreakable fortress, a club where nations entered with grand promises but never left. Until 2016, when Britain, defiant and proud, voted for Brexit, sending shockwaves across the continent. In Dover's pubs, Brexiteers like Nigel raised points to taking back control, dreaming of a free Britain cherry-picking Europe's markets without its rules. Across the Channel, EU diplomat Elise saw danger. If Britain thrived, Frexit, Grexit, Dexit could follow, unraveling the Union. The EU vowed to make Brexit a cautionary tale, a warning etched in economic struggle. As negotiations began, Britain's envoys, led by the charismatic David, believed they held the cards, but Elise's disciplined team stood firm, wielding the EU's four freedoms like a shield. The Battle of Brexit became a clash of dreams and realities. Britain's exports faltered, shelves emptied, and regret grew, while Europe's unity held strong. From Dover's sparse markets to Brussels' bustling halls, the story unfolded. Could Britain forge a new path? Or would the EU's resolve prove that leaving the Hotel European Union meant paying a steep price? The answer would reshape a continent. Story. In the coastal town of Dover, where the White Cliffs stood sentinel over the churning channel, Nigel's pub, the White Cliffs, was a haven for dreamers. It was November 2025, and the air carried the bite of winter and the weight of nearly a decade of Brexit. In 2016, Nigel, a barrel-chested pub owner with a Union Jack tattoo, had been the loudest voice for Leave. His bar was festooned with Vote Leave posters, faded now but still defiant. "We'll take back control," he'd roared to cheering regulars, points raised to a Britain free to strike global deals, keep Europe's markets, and ditch its rules, especially free movement. "The EU needs us," he'd said. "Germany's car makers, France's wine merchants, they'll beg for our business." His optimism was infectious, a beacon for a town weary of Brussels' distant edicts. Across the Channel, in Brussels' glass and steel heart, Elise, a French diplomat with a mind sharp as a guillotine, saw Brexit differently. In her office, cluttered with trade data and legal briefs, she gathered her team, German economists, Italian lawyers, Polish negotiators, in late-night sessions fueled by espresso and urgency. Brexit wasn't just Britain's rebellion. It was a spark that could ignite a wildfire. If Britain thrives outside, she warned, Marine will push Frexit in Paris, Athens will murmur Grexit, Amsterdam will whisper exit. Our union could unravel. The EU's mission was clear: make Brexit a cautionary tale, a warning carved in economic hardship to silence Europe's skeptics. "No cherry-picking," Elise declared, her voice steady. "The four freedoms, goods, services, capital, people, are indivisible." The negotiations began in 2017, a high-stakes chess match. Britain sent David, a suave minister with a gambler's grin, to lead its charge. In London's war room, maps of trade routes pinned to the walls, he rallied his team. "Germany sells 1 in 5 cars to us," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "They won't risk their exports. We'll get the single market without the baggage." David envisioned a bespoke deal: tariff-free trade, no free movement, prosperity without bureaucracy. But in Brussels, Elise's team was a fortress of discipline. They'd studied every angle, their unity forged in smoky rooms. When David arrived, expecting to charm Berlin or Paris, Elise met him with a cool stare. "The EU speaks as one," she said. "No side deals." The numbers were brutal. The UK sent 42% of its goods to the EU, while only 9% of the EU's imports came from Britain. The EU held a £67 billion trade surplus in goods. Brexit stung Europe. Hans, a German carmaker in Munich, cursed lost sales to Britain. Small French exporters like Claire, who shipped artisanal cheeses, grappled with new paperwork, but the pain was manageable. For Britain, it was a wound. The Office for Budget Responsibility whispered grim forecasts. GDP could shrink by 4% compared to a stay-in-the-EU world. In a Kent village, Sarah, a single mother who'd voted Leave, stood in a supermarket, staring at empty shelves. "Bad weather," the shopkeeper muttered, "and energy prices." Sarah, clutching her basket, whispered, "It's Brexit, isn't it? France and Germany aren't short of tomatoes." The EU's negotiators were relentless. When David tried to woo Berlin or Warsaw directly, Elise shut it down. No fractures, she told Hans, who nodded despite his industry's pleas. When Britain balked at a £35 billion bill for EU bureaucrats' pensions, Elise's response was icy. Pay, or no deal. David's charm faltered. The EU's bureaucratic machine, honed by decades of trade deals, ground on. The Economist later called it a masterclass in unity, a take-it-or-leave-it stance that left Britain scrambling. Nigel, watching the news in his pub, felt the first cracks in his optimism. "They're ganging up on us," he muttered. But his regulars were quieter now, their pints less celebratory. In Britain, the old scapegoats vanished. For years, politicians had blamed the EU for everything. NHS waiting lists on EU migrants, low wages on free movement, high prices on Brussels red tape. Now, outside the EU, every problem was pinned on Brexit. In 2022, Mark Carney, former Bank of England governor, claimed UK GDP had plummeted from 97% of Germany's to 70%. Nigel, his pub now half empty as European tourists dwindled, shouted at the TV. He's using dollar terms, skewed by sterling's fall. But the truth lingered: slower growth, lower trade, shrinking tax revenue. Sarah, now volunteering at a food bank, saw family struggle. "Brexit promised us more," she said to a colleague, her voice heavy. "Instead, we're rationing potatoes." Across Europe, the lesson sank in. In Paris, Marines' Frexit rallies, once packed with flag-waving nationalists, dwindled to a few diehards. In Athens, Grexit talk faded. In Amsterdam, Dexit became a fringe joke. Polls showed EU support at its highest in decades, even in Britain, where regret surged. A 2024 survey found 60% of Britons thought Brexit was a mistake. "No one looks at the UK and thinks, 'Let's try that,'" Elise told her team, a rare smile breaking her stoic facade. The EU had won the battle of Brexit, not with fanfare, but by letting Britain's struggles speak louder than any speech. Yet, in 2023, a shift came. The Windsor Framework, struck under Britain's new Prime Minister, Rishi, eased tensions over Northern Ireland. It was a rare EU concession, softening rigid deadlines on trade checks. In Brussels, Elise saw it as strategic. "We're winning 7-0, she told her colleagues. A consolation goal changes nothing. The framework hinted at better relations, a chance to smooth the economic and political frictions that had festered since 2016. But the damage was done. Brexit had hurt both sides. Hans's car factory laid off workers, Claire's cheese exports shrank, but Europe absorbed the blow. The Ukraine war, raging since 2022, underscored shared interests. The UK and EU stood together against Moscow, their divisions seeming petty. In Dover, Nigel's pub grew quieter. Ferries still crossed the channel, but fewer Europeans came, and suppliers grumbled about customs delays. "It's not what I voted for," Nigel admitted one night, wiping down the bar. His regulars, once fervent, now debated rejoining the single market. Sarah, packing food parcels, saw the shortages worsen: bad weather, high energy costs, and Brexit's shadow. She no longer blamed the EU but felt a pang for her 2016 vote. "We thought we'd be free," she told a friend, "but we're just alone." In London, Rishi hailed the Windsor Framework as a new chapter. "We're moving forward," he told Parliament, his voice steady but strained. Think tanks floated options: rejoining the customs union, aligning with the single market, but each came with trade-offs. Nigel scoffed at the idea. Back to Brussels? Never. But Sarah wasn't so sure. "Maybe we need them more than they need us," she said, her eyes on a food bank queue stretching down the street. In Brussels, Elise walked past the EU's gleaming headquarters, her work done. The union stood stronger, its gates still swinging inward. Britain's exit had tested its resilience, but the EU had turned Brexit into a parable, a warning that leaving came at a cost. The channel remained a narrow divide, but the gap in trust and prosperity felt vast. Brexit wasn't a zero-sum game. It was a story of dreams clashing with realities, of a nation stepping out alone and finding the world less welcoming than it hoped. As 2025 drew to a close, Britain faced a choice. Closer reintegration with the EU was possible, but it meant swallowing pride, accepting rules without a say, paying for access. In Dover, Nigel poured a pint. His tattoo faded like his optimism. In Kent, Sarah packed another parcel, wondering if Britain could ever bridge the gap. In Brussels, Elise prepared for the next challenge, knowing the EU's fortress would endure. The tale of Brexit was a lesson in consequences, a reminder that you could leave the Hotel European Union, but its facilities, its markets, its stability came at a price. For Britain, the bill was still coming due, and the path forward was a complex matrix of trade-offs, with no easy answers in sight. Word count, 1550. The story weaves the provided context into a narrative with characters and settings to bring the Brexit saga to life. Let me know if you'd like adjustments or a different focus.